Hi, I'm Michael Killen. In the Silicon Valley, the greater Palo Alto community really is committed to sustainability. Sustainability in terms of many, many things. On this program, I have invited a man who is an executive at the Committee for Green Foothills. That name encompasses a lot, and I'm going to ask Brian Schmidt a series of questions about what his organization is doing to help assure certain aspects of Silicon Valley remain sustainable. Brian, how are you today?
I'm great. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. I'm glad you are here. And so you have the title of somebody that I have never interviewed or been around. You're an advocate.
That's right. I'm the Santa Clara County Advocate for Committee for Green Foothills.
And an advocate, so what does an advocate do, first of all?
We are basically the policy spokesmen and spokeswomen for the Committee for Green Foothills. We go out and we try and promote open space and natural resource protection, try and figure out what are the best policies to support that type of protection, do the analysis, and then try and convince the public and the decision makers to do exactly that.
Okay, I heard two key words, open space and natural resources. So you are advocating for natural space, and who are you doing this for? And
We're doing it for everyone. We work in two counties, Santa Clara County and San Mateo County. I do primarily Santa Clara County issues, and we're working on behalf of the public in order to protect the greater environmental values that people want to support. So open space would be protecting our working farmlands, much of which still survives, and natural habitats that we can see anytime you just look out your window or go for a walk and see the beautiful hills up there. And then the natural resources like the streams that flow through.
can we stay on open space for a moment? And helpful, just give me the bullets. What are the main topics or areas that you folks are developing policies and advocating for those just under open space?
Okay, I would say that it actually changes from year to year depending on what is happening, but most recently been working very consistently on the Santa Clara County Habitat Plan,
Right.
which is going to help determine future of the environment for 500,000 acres.
Okay.
We're working on the San Jose General Plan for the next 30 years. And our third bullet point would be everything. There's just too much to go into, anything that comes up any particular day.
All right. I am going to ask you to elaborate on habitat, natural resources. I don't know if we'll ever get to the day-to-day new things. But before I do, why the overall concern about open space? Can you simplify why the rest of the public, and people in other states should be concerned with open space?
Well, I think people have been concerned about it for, in the case of our organization anyway, almost 50 years. Next year will be our 50th anniversary. And it's the understanding, the term I've heard is that that outward sprawl, suburban type sprawl, if you think that is the future, everlasting, eternal expansion, the outward type of sprawl is like the philosophy of cancer. Instead, if you don't want to expand infinitely, having cities and developed areas grow upward instead of outward provides an alternative vision of the future so that we can keep so much of what we have and not look like Orange County or Southern California, where they've lost a lot of the beautiful things that they had in the past.
Okay, I can think of New Jersey, I can think of Pennsylvania, I can think of a lot of other states where the cities, towns have just spread and spread right over everything, and there is hardly any open space except a park here or two, and a parking lot or whatever. And you don't think that's good?
No, that isn't a future that people want to have. I think that we're working on behalf of the public that has voted consistently to protect our natural areas and to keep the cities more or less where we are. And that's why Committee for Green Foothills was so important in setting up Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District that preserved tens of thousands of acres up on our hills, and the Open Space Authority, Santa Clara County Parks Charter Fund that has set up what could be one of the best county park system in the country, because the people want to see that there are wild and natural spaces even in this area with millions of people.
The economic benefit to us taxpayers of going up instead of out, is there one?
I think there's some very important ones, especially when you think about what they call the environmental externalities, costs that occur from sprawl that no one pays for in terms of money, but they pay for in other terms, like the suburban sprawl and smog that we used to have and still have to some extent. That's because everyone is spread far out, just like they are down in LA County, and have to drive huge distances.
Okay, so here the economic thing is smog, health, okay? Health costs, personal costs, okay. But what about the infrastructural issue?
If you have people in a relatively smaller area, infrastructure costs much less. So one example, the San Jose General Plan that I mentioned, the main thing that we have been working on in that area is stopping that city from sprawling further south, so that the San Francisco to San Jose sprawl that has occurred would finally stop at Coyote Valley, 6,000 acre, mostly farmland valley. And one point we've made is there's no reason to spread further south there, because you'd have to create all this new infrastructure. We can use existing infrastructure, existing and often empty office buildings, instead of losing farmland.
Okay, now we are in California, Northern California, or the San Francisco Palo Alto community, and it is a special place. But, you know, I have friends in the Midwest, in Kansas and Oklahoma, and what you're advocating is to take some of my freedom away. If I want to build 5 more houses next to my house and keep going into the hills, I want to be able to do that, don't you?
People do have property rights, and we don't try and violate property rights. The law has some definitions of when you have the right to do whatever you want to do, but you have to remember at the same time that no man is an island, no piece of land or parcel of land is an island in the sense that it has effects on everyone else. So we're trying to let people handle their own properties within the context of understanding that they have an effect on everyone else.
Okay. I was just wondering if we could really net down the economic benefits, because I'm a taxpayer and a lot of other people are, of going up instead of sprawl. And maybe you can, I'm going to say what you basically told me. There are health costs by going out.
Right.
Because various kinds of things go up in the air that are not good for our health, and that harms us and costs a lot of money. And the infrastructure for the cars and whatever, that's very expensive. And are there other economic reasons why I should be for protecting open space?
One reason would be to increase the value of your property. When our land values are worth more in our areas, partly because almost anywhere in the South Bay, 15 minutes can get you to a beautiful spot.
Oh, okay. So if I own some real estate, if an area is cordoned off as being the area where sprawl has occurred, and we can go up and we can't go out, then we have a limited resource in terms of the land and what's on that land, and the land goes up in value. Is that right?
Well, it does, but the other thing that's important is what is outside of those city limits are areas that people can enjoy. People love to live next to a county park. You can just go out your door and you're in beautiful nature. That house next to a county park is worth a lot more money.
I had not thought about that. I want to say now, it sounds wise that organizations like yours and the community we're in is trying to limit sprawl, protect the open spaces, because there are economic and other benefits to us, and probably all the folks across the United States and other places should follow your lead, okay?
Yeah, there's Rancho San Antonio County Park, not too far from here. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it has the annual visitation is 1 million people each year.
Really?
Yosemite National Park gets 10 million. So our one little county park has generated all that activity and all that enjoyment. That makes our county that much more a wonderful place to live.
Give me an idea where that, say the name of the park again.
Rancho San Antonio
And where
County
is it?
Park. It's right outside of Cupertino.
Right outside, okay. All right, I haven't been there, and I'm going to go there, but I've been to Yosemite.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, I asked you for to give me the categories of the policies that your group is especially working on, and I remember the first one was habitat. What do you mean by habitat?
Habitat means that, well, the term is very broad. In our context, we're talking about a habitat plan to protect the land and the overall environment that our wildlife uses, in particular endangered species use in our environment. Because there are certain legal protections, we as a nation have decided that we don't want to keep losing species that we've lost in the past. And that means we need to take certain legal steps to protect them.
All right. Can you give me an economic reason for us to be concerned with some endangered species or species that are not endangered?
There's been any number of important economic discoveries that have relied upon natural habitat or species. There was a discovery a number of years ago, something called Taxol, which was used for breast cancer treatment. And it came from the Pacific yew of tree in our coastal forests. So one statement by a very famous ecologist, Aldo Leopold, is that the rule of intelligent tinkering is never lose any parts. Because if you might need that part, and if we lose a species, we will never know what value it could have brought for us. And that's what we're trying to stop.
So, out in those hills, in those grounds, there's resources that we need. And we don't want to mess with them because a domino effect could occur. But there's resources out there that, for example, we can use to create new medicines that can help make sure our children, our grandchildren, our spouses, etc., have a better life. Am I paraphrasing you?
Yes, that's one aspect of it. And even if that particular species might not contain the particular medicine we need, it could be an important prey species for something else.
Okay.
So we never know what value it might have on either economic or just spiritual value that people have for these things.
So when you use the word habitat, you're really talking about primarily those living creatures outside of the area that is the boundary of the sprawl.
That's pretty much correct, with the one important exception that we're lucky in our area to have rivers and streams that are still important natural habitat, an important natural resource. And those go through our cities. San Francisco Creek through Palo Alto has steelhead in it, an endangered species.
Really?
It's incredible that we have that. Same thing in San Jose or Stevens Creek in Cupertino and other cities.
Okay. The second policy area that you mentioned was natural resources, right? I want to hold that for a second, but I just want to ask, as an advocate, if somebody starts to build outside in an area that has now been designated open space, what do you do?
If they are trying to do something that's not allowed under the current regulations, then I think it's relatively straightforward. We try and back up the county planners and county governmental officials that generally do a reasonable job of applying the clear regulations. It's only when it's not so clear that things get a little bit more complicated. I'm a lawyer by background, and that helps me try and understand the rules and then try and say that there are significant environmental impacts, and California law requires that you consider those. You don't do something called looking before leaping. You really figure it out first.
Okay, is that the California EPA?
The Environmental Quality Act,
Well, okay.
EQA, CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act.
All right, before we go to natural resources, your legal background, your education is in what aspect of law?
Environmental law.
Environment, okay. All right, that's good.
I'm a Stanford grad, so local.
Good. They've invited me over there once in a while, but not to go to school. You said the other area that your group concentrates on for developing effective policies is in the area of natural resources. I think I know a little bit what you might mean about natural resources, but how about putting that topic into perspective for us?
Well, it broadens out some of our protection of farmlands and natural habitats, and to deal with anything that has an effect on those areas. Like our water, our streams are very important. They might not be, some of them go through very developed areas, but if they still have an important effect on our environment, then we want to preserve them and try and keep them as natural as possible. The other area that we've been consistently involved with is our primary coastal natural resource, the San Francisco Bay, and since Committee for Green Foothills also works in San Mateo County, on the coastal side of San Mateo County. So protecting those areas from development and helping the bay gradually come back, I think, is an important thing that people might not know as much about as they should.
I had a little problem understanding what you're saying. You mentioned the farmland. Is the farmland what you consider a natural resource?
I would say the farmland is more of part of our overall sustainability, that the farmland provides a buffer and a value to the land that keeps cities from sprawling outward into the inappropriate type of development.
But it's sort of a natural resource in your thinking. Yeah?
I would say that would be legitimate because it helps retain our local heritage and retaining our ability to feed ourselves.
So the farmland and the open space, the forests and the fields, the ocean, the bay, those are all, and then the water, the ocean water or the streams and rivers, those are all the elements of natural resources, but you probably could come up with more, but that's...
Sure, those are the primary issues that we deal with, and we are not a kitchen sink environmental organization that handles anything. Yeah. We recognize we're glad to be small, just working in 2 counties, a small staff, and we specialize. So that's why we work on these particular issues.
Santa Clara and
San Mateo.
San Mateo, yes. So, by the way, we're going to take a short break for a moment, and since we're talking about sustainability across all these areas, I think I mentioned to you, I'm making what I believe is the largest painting in the world on the topic of sustainability. And I have hopes that it will also be the most important ever produced. And this is a rough of only 12 feet of it. And, you know, I had a group of artists all with 50 more years experience. The other day they looked at it and they said it'll take another year to finish this painting, which I hope is used by many organizations to increase awareness of the need for sustainability of public space, natural resources, including energy. So we've covered habitat, and we've covered parts of natural resources. But I would like an example, if you can give it, or some other way to help me understand how you advocate to protect the natural resources.
I would say that I'm a lobbyist, and some of the images of lobbyists are kind of greasy guys with $100 bills
Yeah.
coming off of them. Unfortunately, I have no $100 bills, but instead, what I try and do is work primarily with our local officials, because on the state and federal level, our assembly members and congresspeople tend to do the right thing for those levels. So our local battles, the ones we focus on, I try and see what are the best policies that will support protecting farmlands, natural habitats, our streams, the bay, and then support those policies, go to meetings, meet with officials, and try and educate the public as well so that they can all participate and help them go forward.
So I heard a couple of things. You stay close to the politicians, and you also said the politicians protecting open space and natural resources is something that resonates very nicely with this group, and you help educate them on issues and vice versa. And do you go to court?
I personally do not. I used to do that, but now I'm at this working on a different level of trying to work on policies and not litigation. But our organization, if it has to, will go to court when there are environmental violations, and that's the only way to get them resolved. And we have done that a number of times in the past. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but we only do it when we think we need to.
Okay. This may be a little bit of an oddball question, but in preparing a policy, you must have some kind of framework for thinking. Like, let me just give an example of something else. Like, generals are always thinking about objectives, strategies, and tactics, and that's a bit of their framework. Do you have a framework?
You always try and think, what is going to happen next? What will be the consequence of something that we are working on? One example was that San Jose general plan that I mentioned, that we're trying to protect Coyote Valley. One suggestion that we've had is that if San Jose does economic development and it wants to do a lot in the city, it develop a policy that the farmlands like Coyote Valley should be the last place it will develop. So if somebody wants to bring in new jobs to San Jose, send them everywhere else to do redevelopment, to develop the downtown and other places, only last at Coyote Valley, because the next idea behind that is they'll never get there. So if we can't win outright right now, we delay the bad thing, and maybe it'll never happen at all. So when you're fighting defense, stalling is a good technique. That's a good example of strategy.
Okay, good. Let me just ask, first of all, I personally cannot envision Coyote Valley. I don't know where it begins and where it ends, but I get the feeling, and I don't know where San Jose ends, but Coyote Valley is near the end, the southern part of San Jose.
Exactly.
And that's an area that you want to stay an open space.
Right. It's the first big area of farmland that someone driving from 101 south from San Francisco, going all the way through, they're not going to hit farmland until they get to the southern end of San Jose. And then they have about 4, 5, 6 miles of farmland, and then they get to Morgan Hill. Okay. Coyote Valley is that farmland.
So that's the southern boundary. And then on the western boundary, it is the Santa Cruz Foothill Mountains. Is that?
That's right. Skyline Drive up in those areas.
All right. And then on the east or northeast, whatever, it's the San Francisco Bay.
Right.
And San Mateo County goes up to San Francisco County, I believe, and you have no control over San Francisco. It's already been sprawled.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I've learned a lot from you about open space and protecting natural resources, and I think that's very valuable. But I'd like to ask you, I mean, you're a man who has, I think, multiple degrees, and you're obviously very bright and intelligent. Why this field? What drives you to work so hard as being an advocate for really the people, the people and the other species? What, what drives you to do that?
I think it's being able to see the things that I am working on. I think it frankly goes back to my childhood, growing up in suburbs, upstate New York, but in an area that was old farmland, and a lot of the farms, the little bits and pieces, had reverted to woods. And we had a tiny little strip just in my backyard, 20 feet wide, and I was just in love with getting out and spending that time there. And I've always had this love for nature, and that led me to try and figure out how I could work to help other people have that same opportunity that I was lucky to have as a kid.
Okay. And your parents love the nature?
Yeah, they do. They do.
All right, wonderful. I just want to paraphrase a couple of things, or summarize a few things, but I'd like you to, if I make an error, just interrupt me, So you are advocating to slow down or stop the growth of sprawl throughout the United States, throughout
Our two counties.
two counties, and you prefer to have everything go up, and there's a lot of good economic and other reasons for doing that. We have very little time left. There are many communities throughout the United States that are not as progressive as this part of the nation, but they have very smart, intelligent, well-meaning people there. Can I have one suggestion, that you got to be fast, for what other communities can do to start having an organization like yours?
Just choose the issue that you're most concerned about and keep working on it. Put your heart into it. Other issues will arise and you will make it happen.
All right, good. I want to say you've been a wonderful guest, and let's see. Hi, I'm Michael Killen. My guest has been Brian Schmidt, and he is with the Committee for Green Foothills, and he is an advocate, and he's not really an advocate just for open space and natural resources. He's an advocate for all of us. And although I wish we had more time for him to give more recommendations for what the rest of the country should do, but we don't. Thank you. I'm Michael Killen.